Good morning, people, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 8th of August. I'm Derek Clark, and we're joined by a full squad this morning. First of all, Johnny McFarlane. How are we doing, Johnny?
Yeah, good. It's good to be back after a few days off. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some chat about yesterday's game.
And young Joshua, who was at the game on Saturday for us. We'll talk in detail about that win over Kilmarnock. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good, but Johnny has holiday brain because it wasn't yesterday. unless Saturday was a very long day, I think.
Sorry, yeah.
Confusing me already.
It may have been for you, Joshua, since you were working at the game for us and covered it in great detail as always. Just a reminder, folks, before we talk of all things Rangers, we've got that great offer on the website just now. £2 for 2 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details, and I'll bung the link into the comment section as well. So hit that and you can sign up. So many of you signing up and saying great things, so thank you very much for doing so. Okay, let's talk Rangers then. Joshua, you headed along to Ibrox on Saturday. A workmanlike performance, you could say. Kilmarnock posed a stiff resistance as we expected. But Rangers eventually got the 3 points and the win. Antonio Colak getting the opener before being replaced by Alfredo Morelos after a long absence. Great reception he received coming on the pitch, and great to see him not marking his comeback with a goal as well. 2-0 it finished. What were your main takeaways from the game?
I'm just pulling up what I wrote yesterday because I think this is the main thing, Derek. The Rangers had total control. The only chance they conceded was Rory McKenzie. It was actually quite a good chance they conceded, a relatively good chance. Rory McKenzie got on the kind of wrong side of James Sands, but that was the only time Kilmarnock counted. So Rangers, complete control of the game. It was very much kind of an attack versus defence drill, and but their expected goals was less than one until Morelos scored that late goal. So I kind of put it yesterday, is that cause for concern, or is it just the nature sometimes of these types of games? And you have to obviously consider as well that the total control element in it. I thought the Rangers' tempo was slightly lacking. I wrote an analysis piece yesterday about how Kilmarnock defended. McInnes has often done the kind of man-for-man approach that David Martindale used against Rangers the opening day of the season. He didn't do that. He was very compact around the ball, his side on Saturday, and I thought sometimes Rangers just didn't stretch Kilmarnock enough, and there's a screen grab in that piece where Stephen Davis takes a shot in the first half, and all 10 Kilmarnock players, I'm going to do an analysis video later, so I'll include it in that, all 10 Kilmarnock players are kind of within 20 yards of one another, Derek, and that's what these teams have to do in terms of trying to keep the score down and give themselves a platform to play. It's not a criticism, but it's just that it's a fact. It's the nature of what you have to face. And I think at points Rangers didn't maybe stretch that enough, but equally total control. You'd hope that with more time, these players that are new, there's going to be greater fluency. You're missing Kent in that starting 11. Matondo still getting up to speed, Morelos to come back. And Stephen Davis, I thought, was really good alongside Malik Tillman. For me, I put Malik Tillman as my man of the match. I think Stephen Davis is also a really fair shout. But I just think you see what Malik Tillman gives you playing through the middle and in the second half as well against Livingston. Just looked head and shoulders above everyone for me in terms of his technical quality. So positive to see him start so well and 3 points, etc., etc. But you always want to look deeper at it and think how if this game was played out 10 times, how many would Rangers win? Because I think that's why Rangers lost the league last season. When they were scraping out victories, the numbers maybe suggested that they weren't quite creating enough chances. So it'll be intriguing to kind of see over the next few weeks how that balances out. As I say, with these players having a little bit more time together and the manager getting his full strength 11 out there.
Yeah, Joshua mentions Stephen Davis. Johnny, I know you commented on his performance on Saturday. I was calling for his inclusion in the team on Friday as well. And it was
vindication, Derek.
It is vindication, absolutely. Good to see that the coaching staff read our pieces on the Rangers Review. He has to play, doesn't he, Johnny? I think he's still a Rolls Royce. That's the reason why he signed a one-year extension. It's not just his off-field influence. On the pitch, he can still do it. And he's that person in the middle of the park that can create opportunities from deep-lying positions.
Yeah, we're going to start a new thing at the Rangers Review, which is a moratorium on the idea of 37-year-old Stephen Davis. Because, do you know what? It's actually irrelevant. We should just start looking at his performances on the field and not his age, because he's the ultimate proof that the age is just a number. He does not look like a player that has diminished at all based on the last 3 seasons. He does not look worse than he did when he first signed for Rangers once again after the spell down south. He is still as slick and classy as ever. And I was talking to a former Rangers player about this a few days ago, and he was saying to me, you know, the thing about Stephen Davis is his experience is so vast that, and he's so quick in the mind that it enables him to kind of catch up in terms of his physicality, because it's impossible at 37 to be the kind of physical force you were at 25. Obviously, you're not going to be. But that's the equalizer. His mental strength and his experience and his ability to understand the game, to knit patterns of play together. And I think when you're playing against these sides like Kilmarnock that are just looking to sit in and frustrate, that was not even a low block. That was a low block, wasn't it? I mean, it was truly impressively dogged and defensive from Derek McInnes's Kilmarnock. Nearly called them Aberdeen, but pretty similar in a lot of ways, as you might expect. Perhaps lacking the quality that he had at Aberdeen, of course. But in terms of breaking teams down going forward, Derek, you mentioned Malik Tillman. I know I've just really praised Stephen Davis, but I think there's a little bit of people getting slightly carried away with Malik Tillman. I'm not aboard the Malik Tillman train quite yet. Really, really good technical, skillful player. But he really has a habit of disappearing in games after a good spell. Now, that might be fitness, and I hope that's what it is, because he certainly has the talent to dominate this kind of level. That's clear. You can tell with the back heel flick that he did in the game early doors. I think it was a 1-2. Was it with Scott Wright? I can't quite recall who it was with, but it was certainly a great moment, and he was fouled on the edge of the box. And he's also physically strong, which is a major factor in having an impact on Scottish games. You know, I remember when I first saw Amad Diallo, I thought, slight concerns, and I've got to be honest, I've got the same concerns about Yilmaz and how he's going to be consistently targeted by savvy Scottish coaches. They're going to look to bully him, so he's going to have to stand up to that. There's no concerns like that about Tillman. But I do think he needs to show it for a more sustained period. It was quite alarming that he was so good for 40 minutes and then kind of slipped out of the game and not providing any key moments like an assist or a goal. As CGM55 there is saying, you know, you don't want to get another player that's kind of like one of these youth football players that is technically terrific but doesn't deliver in the core moment when you need delivery. Now, it's all massively early days, and I don't want to rain on anyone's parade when it comes to Tillman, but I think we need to be balanced about how we're approaching his performances so far, and I do think there's plenty for him to still do.
Yeah. You watched Tillman at close hand, Joshua. What do you make of him? I think he's got bags of potential, and I think we need to give him a bit of time. Again, young lad coming to a foreign country, unique nature of Scottish football, the demands placed upon them at Rangers. It's going to take these boys time, isn't it? We need to remember they're just young lads as well.
Well, I am on the trend, so I'll save you guys.
Yeah, all I'm doing is trying to listen. Obviously, I think he's a good player, and obviously it's impressive. I'm just trying to temper expectation a little bit. I think there's an element of realism that needs to be injected into the debate. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think also on the point of that he faded. What he's doing in that first half in particular, he's taking the ball in under pressure with like 3-4 players around him when everyone else is taking the ball outside of Kilmarnock. And he's actually playing through. No one else was making a difference through the middle in that first half. So he's doing a more difficult task. And then he also plays that ball into Morelos that could well be an assist before he comes off. I think he came off about 70 minutes. So yes, he's maybe not going to give you the complete full performance just now. But you know, I think when you consider the fact that that's his second appearance in the league for Rangers. He looks really strong. He's got that burst of pace to match up with his technical ability. But I just thought you're really with almost 6 Kilmarnock players in that you know, they're playing in that kind of narrow 4-3-3. The actions and stuff that he was doing, yeah, I just thought it was really difficult to carry off, and I was quite impressed with it. So, yeah, obviously, players need to make a sustained impact for them to be maybe given that much praise. But in terms of, if you're looking at him in the first 2 outings in the Scottish Premiership, playing against the deep defence, playing against physicality, tasked with breaking down teams, I think there's a lot to be encouraged about. And yeah, it's the same. You know, Colak should get on the end of that cross that Tillman puts in on Tuesday night. You know, sometimes this is why maybe assist isn't always the best metric, because it depends on the kind of scorer's delivery. But yeah, definitely need to give him a little bit more time. But I'm on the train at the moment.
Joshua, where do you stand on Yilmaz? Johnny says he's got concerns that he's going to be targeted at the back post and what have you, with the big physical players. What did you make of his performance, and do you have any concerns with regards to that?
Well, I think you saw that Kilmarnock put Lafferty on James Sands, who I thought had a pretty good game. Made kind of one mistake that he made up for quite quickly. And Yilmaz, the Kilmarnock, I think it was their right back, was quite a lot bigger than Yilmaz, and you've seen that at points. So, yeah, of course, I'm sure Rangers will have given this a fair amount of consideration, and obviously everyone always thinks, what about, you know, back post headers, or, you know, you always see, I think it was Alexander-Arnold kind of got caught out with a similar thing at the weekend. But I don't know, to use another example, I think what Sands has done quite well sometimes when he's not always won the first physical duel is, you know, Johnny always uses the example of Cannavaro on Twitter. It's not always just about size, and it's not always about maybe always winning the first duel, but how you maybe win the second ball, or just control the situation in a different way. So I do think that what you'll see is a lot, say, for example, Sands and Yilmaz are to play more, although I think it'll be Davies at left centre-back. I do think you'll see a lot of that, a big right back or a big right wing back. St Johnstone did that with Sean Rooney 2 seasons ago, and kind of won, I think it was against Hibs in the Scottish Cup. They scored the Scottish Cup final, I think I'm right in saying. So it is a pretty viable tactic and a fair point to raise. But all this stuff, I actually think he had quite a good aerial duel success rate in Turkey as well. Just, I think I've seen something on Patrick Kaski's Twitter about that. Obviously a good friend of the show and contributor to the website. So definitely a viable cause for concern, but I'm sure that that's something Rangers will have looked at, given the nature of the football he's coming into, and seen something that's sufficient to suggest that it won't be too much of an Achilles heel, because there is a lot of small fullbacks in the league as well, isn't there, or a decent number. It's not as if Rangers are going to be the only team who have players under 6 foot.
Yeah, Johnny, Antonio Colak, great to see him getting on the score sheet on Saturday. Lots of comments coming in with regards to Alfredo. We'll touch on that shortly, but I can see this guy getting a number of goals for Rangers this season, and when you need a man to put the ball away in the penalty box, he's your man. Were you pleased with his performance on Saturday?
Delighted, because I've been saying since the get-go that I think he would be a really, really good signing for Rangers, because what has been lacking at times is a penalty box poacher who just thrives on putting the ball in the back of the net. And I think we can see that the kind of player that Colak is, he's going to be one of those guys that just gets on the end of things. Now, you need to give him service. And if you give him service, like he showed with his finish and how sharp he was in terms of once he got on the end of the chance, it was a really, really good pass into Tom Lawrence, who I thought teed him up brilliantly. And then a difficult finish, but he's put it into the corner really, really well. I don't know what the XG on that goal was, Josh, if you've got that to hand.
It was the chance was 0.17, but the actual shot, I'll tell you the post shot XG if you keep talking. Give me a sec. Oh no, yeah, I've got to hear 0.83. So
yeah, so
basically a very good finish.
Yeah. The difference between those two numbers tells you how good a finish it was. You know, a shot that you would be expected to score less than 1 in 5 times becomes a shot that's hitting the back of the net more than 4 out of 5 times. So that really tells you everything you need to know. I think it's going to take time for the team to get used to him. Alfredo Morelos is kind of like he's almost like a Swiss Army knife striker, because he can just do everything. You know, you put him up there and he can bully defenders, he can occupy defenders, he can run the channels, he can go in behind. Colak's not like that. And do you know what? Rangers don't need another guy like that, because Alfredo Morelos is already there. But what Colak should give you is the kind of finishing that we saw against Kilmarnock, against a team that was really stubborn. He's a big physical guy, and I think once the team gets used to his runs and used to what he's going to give, because he's not the guy that comes short all the time and lays things off. He's not a link-up player, really. Now, you might be asked to do more of that, but I don't think that's what his game is. His game is going up against the last defender and running in behind. And people look at him and think, oh, but he's a big target man. Well, he's not. Yeah, he might be physically large, he might be a big guy, but that's not his game. So I really think he'll come good. I think it's a matter of just the team getting used to what he brings. And of course, when Morelos is fit, Morelos is going to come back in and be first choice. Colak was not brought into Rangers to be first choice. So I think that's key. Some of the criticism has been really unfair. I think, Derek, you addressed it in a piece. David Edgar wrote a piece for us where he addressed it. I think some of Mark Hateley's comments were quite hard on him. He's just coming in. It's very, very early doors. Obviously, Mark Hateley's entitled to his opinion. He knows more about striking than I'll ever know. But I just think sometimes you just need to give players a chance to bed in and show what they're capable of. And, John Lundstrom proves that if you give players time, sometimes they'll bounce back and pay you back in spades. So, yeah, I think there's more to come from Colak.
Yeah, he's technically scored 3 goals in his last 4 games. So if we're counting the Livingston one that was flagged offside, so that's a decent record. The MMA King says he's a Croatian Harry Kane, no question. I don't think he's quite at that level, but listen, if he's half as good as Harry Kane, then I think that'll be fine by a lot of supporters. Alfredo, then Joshua, great to see him getting back on the pitch and marking his return with a goal. Proper poacher's finish. It begs the question now. Does Giovanni van Bronckhorst play him from the start on Tuesday? Alan Stewart, Laurie Hall makes a point, I think, because Alfredo and Colak are so different, we could potentially see them in a 3-5-2 together. I'm not quite sure about that. But you're the manager, Joshua. Alfredo or Antonio on Tuesday night?
Sadly not. I was just going to read you out, Derek, we spoke to Colak after the game and I asked him about how he feels he's adapting to this. Obviously, a lot of discussion this week's been, are Rangers playing to Colak like he's Morelos? Is Colak not adapting enough to Rangers? I think Craig wrote about it on the website earlier in the week, and he was very good conversation after the game, and he said, when I asked if do you feel you're adapted to the style and learning about your teammates, he says learning game by game. Away at Livingston is not an easy game. Sometimes as a striker you don't have many touches, but when the ball comes you have to score, which to be fair he did. As you say, Derek, he was ruled offside unfairly. Unfortunately, in that game, it was an offside goal. I'm feeling better every game. I'm learning to see the movements and passes of every player. And as Johnny says, he's not, and I think you've seen that very clearly over the first few games, he's not a link-up player. It almost makes you realise just how good Alfredo Morelos is at that aspect of his game. But he was more involved, came off the front more. I looked at his pass map, and it was certainly a lot more varied in that trip to Livingston, which is a specific type of game. Would I start him tomorrow? I guess it really depends how fit Morelos is, which is a bit of a cop-out. I don't know if you noticed, but when Morelos scored, he kind of fell over. And I didn't know, part of me thought that's funny, he's just emotionally exhausted. And part of me thought maybe he's just gassed after, not having, that's his first game, minutes in 5 months.
Yes.
So it's a big ask. This time last year when he was coming back, it wasn't as if he'd been injured for 5 months. So I don't think he'll start. I think Rangers will know they're not going to blow this team away in the first half because Union are going to come and sit in and focus on being really solid, play the long game. If Colak's in and around the box, that should suit him better than having to, kind of get his team up the pitch. And if he can just occupy the penalty box, I think it'll be Tillman close to Colak. Hopefully Kent's back. If not, one of maybe Matondo on the right with Lawrence coming inside again. So I don't think it'll be Morelos there, but you see the benefit of having him come off the bench if it's 1-0 after an hour. That's, for me, probably a better option than him if he's not at his peak match fitness, burning himself out in the first 45 minutes and maybe not being able to play the end of the game. But maybe they were just saving it at the weekend and he is really match fit. We just don't know.
One thing I'd say about that is 2 up front with Morelos has never worked. It's never worked. So it started off with Jason Cummings when he arrived, and people thought that's kind of like a little and large kind of pairing. Morelos can occupy defenders and Cummings can be the fox in the box. Did not work one little bit. They tried to play Defoe and Morelos together, two guys that got on really, really well. Loads of respect between them. Just didn't work. The only time any kind of partnership has ever kind of really worked as a tactical exercise was when Gerrard played Roof and Morelos together as 2 9s with Kent in behind in an Old Firm game.
Yeah.
They weren't playing as a partnership. It wasn't that kind of performance. It was more like the way they were playing kind of stretched Celtic and allowed space for Kent to just run riot because Scott Brown just couldn't get anywhere near Ryan Kent. And so there was lots of space for them to cause havoc. And I just don't think Morelos is a guy that really thrives on working off someone. He's an individualist, and yeah, he'll bring others into play, but he's the one that's hungry to get in the back of the net, the ball in the back of the net. I just don't think it works, Josh. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, the evidence, body of evidence, as you say, probably suggests no. And when they played as 2 number 9s more last season, I remember you being very against it, Johnny, kind of thinking that they play in the same position. And certainly, I remember the 2-2 draw at home with Aberdeen when it was a front three of Hadji, Roof and Morelos, and there's just no pace in that team. When it did work, I guess you could say, was when Roof was playing as one of the 2 10s, but then it's not really a partnership. So I think, you kind of think in a partnership in an old school 4-4-2 style, which it just doesn't really happen anymore. So could Morelos drop deep in some games and allow Colak to be higher? Yes, probably. But if you look at how Van Bronckhorst likes to use a central striker, how he's got the best out of Morelos, it's by using him closer to goal and still using his link-up play, but by simplifying his game. So I agree with Johnny. I don't think Colak's been brought in to be the number 9. He's been all the way as literally the number 9, but he's been brought in to provide competition for Morelos. Allow that rotational option. But, Morelos' form in the first 3 months under Van Bronckhorst, for me, was the best he's played at Rangers. And I think it'll be about getting that level out of him, hopefully with a new contract, as obviously Van Bronckhorst said at the open training day to Sky. So, yeah, I think it's unlikely, not improbable, but as Johnny said, I think it's quite unlikely.
Yeah, Rory asked the question, where is Roof? Is he still injured, I presume? Giovanni Van Bronckhorst did update us, I think last week, Rory said he's back on the grass. He was a couple of weeks away from being back involved. I think that was around about 10 days ago or something like that. What we'll do is we'll get an update from the manager this afternoon when he carries out his pre-match press conference ahead of the game tomorrow. So we'll get a bigger idea of when he's likely to return to action. Lots of comments coming in as well with regards to Ryan Kent. Of course, missing again at the weekend. Van Bronckhorst was asked about him after the game on Saturday. This is what he said. Today came too soon for Ryan, but we're working hard to get him ready for Tuesday. Hopefully, we will manage to do so. How important is he, Joshua, for Rangers if they want to progress past Union on Tuesday night, that Ryan Kent is in that starting lineup?
I think very. Seen how important he was, obviously, in the European run last season. Van Bronckhorst said hopefully he'll be back. So I think that's a yes or a no. I guess the encouraging angle on that would be that there was a hope that he'd be back for the weekend, which suggests that maybe he's just slightly behind schedule and that will then make the kind of knock-on game. But Kent being there would be massive. I think from the left, you see, I thought Lawrence had a good game, but when you don't have that pace of Kent on the left, it's certainly pretty noticeable. And yeah, I agree with that. I think in Europe in particular, he's quite a game changer. So it'll give everyone a lift if he's available. I have a sneaky suspicion he will be, because I think Van Bronckhorst would have, maybe tempered expectation more if it was likely that Kent's not, because it's only tomorrow the game, it's not Thursday, so it's not long to go. But yeah, it'll be a huge boost, and I think it would really help Rangers' chances if he's around.
Yeah. Another issue, Johnny, a question that's come in I wanted to address from Ross Marshall here. Any word on Fashion missing again from the squad? We've not seen him at all so far, Johnny. It doesn't look good for the Zambian, does it, in terms of getting an opportunity? I can't see, maybe will he be involved on Tuesday night? I'm not so sure. Does he have a Rangers future based on the fact we've not really seen him yet this season?
Well, it doesn't look like it, does it, at this point in time? It doesn't look like he's really in the plans.
No.
I mean, Colak's obviously come in, which means that there's more competition for a striking place. In terms of the wide areas, there's more players now in there. I mean, you've got Tom Lawrence, you've got Matondo. Suddenly, Fashion Sakala has got a real battle on his hands. I was never convinced that Giovanni van Bronckhorst was that enamoured with Sakala based around his use of him last season. So I think we're just seeing that probably is the case now. That's he's not a first choice important pick as far as Van Bronckhorst sees it. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not he ends up going out on loan before the transfer window ends.
Yeah.
I still think he's a useful player, but I can understand why fundamentally Giovanni Van Bronckhorst might just find him a little bit too raw for his liking.
Yeah.
Technically, I think he's still got a lot to do in terms of improving his skills to ensure he's the most effective player that he can be. We know at times he's performed really well in terms of and in terms of goals and assists. His numbers are pretty impressive, but he's also erratic and he's also capable of doing stuff that is very, very frustrating. He's one of those players, and maybe Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is the kind of manager that can't be bothered with that, having that stress in his life of not knowing what you're going to get. I know if I was a football manager, that's just not my kind of player. I'd want a level of technical competence that I could rely on. So there wasn't that sense of drama. Now, he could win you the game, but he could also give the ball away and cause a concession. So that's the kind of player he is, and some managers just don't want that.
Do you know what, as well as Derek, is that where is Sakala realistically going to get minutes this season from the left wing? Rangers left winger's been out for 2 games and Sakala hasn't played a minute. So if you're reading between the lines in that sense, Lawrence was playing from there at the weekend. Rangers changed their shape in midweek. It's hard to see how he gets the minutes that he'll also want at his stage in his career. So it'll be interesting to see what happens for the remainder of the window, because certainly reading between the lines, if there was any week where he was going to get a chance at the start of the season as an important member of the team, I think it would have been when Kent was out of action.
Yeah. Union get beat at the weekend 3-0 by Mechelen. Sonny Boyce says that the rested 7 players, though they did have, I looked at their team that they did put on, many of the players that played against Rangers started that game. I mean, that will give Rangers encouragement. There's no doubt about it heading into the game. I've seen the comments from their captain, Johnny Teddy Chuma, saying that that they'll be able to cope with it. The Ibrox atmosphere, it's not going to be anything special to them. It's sort of...
Did you ever get that firmed up, those quotes? We saw them doing the round.
Couldn't find them. No.
Yeah, so I think we should be careful about those quotes, to be honest.
Yeah, apparently speaking in the Belgian press, the Union skipper. But listen, it's going to be tough, isn't it? We spoke about Kilmarnock putting the low block. I think Union, the best defensive record in Belgium last season. They don't concede many goals. I don't imagine they'll be coming out all gung-ho and try and kill the tie. I think they're just going to try and keep it contained and try and prevent Rangers from getting in behind, Johnny. So it's going to be up to Rangers to find the key to unlock them, isn't it? And I mean, do you have confidence watching the previous games of the season? Livingston, Kilmarnock, where they sort of huffed and puffed, but they managed to get the breakthrough in the end, that they can get those goals required. And can you see them not conceding?
I can see them not conceding. I have my concerns about whether or not there's the attacking potency at the top, or not even potency. I suppose the better word is cohesion between the players, because you're still seeing that early season malaise, I think, in the play, whereby Tom Lawrence is looking for a certain run, he's not getting it, and players are looking for him to make certain angles, and they're not getting it. They're just getting used to each other. And these little passages of play that are breaking down just at the final point, just because of that lack of innate understanding of each other's games. And that'll only come with time. Very few players just strike up that kind of intimacy immediately in terms of marrying 2 styles of play together between individual teammates. I've got to say, I'm not confident about this game. I'm not confident about it. I was quite impressed by Union in that first game, people are saying, "Oh, they're not a good opponent," and they're totally average. I don't think an average team would have done what they did to Rangers. Frankly, I think Rangers are a good team. So I think they're solid and well organised and well drilled, and you could see that they stick to their shape really, really doggedly. They don't give up many chances, and they'll exploit your weaknesses. They sat back in the opening phase of that game, and they just got to grips with it slowly but surely. And after 20 minutes, they just took control. They solved problems on the pitch themselves, and Rangers just didn't have the answer. And ultimately, were lucky to come away with just a 2-0 defeat. And I don't want to be too down, too negative. I've just think it's maybe come a little bit too early for this Rangers side. Just a level of attacking cohesion, I'll just use the word again, that they need to break them down, that we'd need to spark something to life.
Yeah,
we all knew it was going to be a really difficult game for Rangers. We always knew that, and we knew that the next round would be extremely difficult as well. And perhaps it's just a step too far at this stage, because there is a significant kind of rebuild, reimagination, reboot going on, especially in attacking areas.
Yeah, Joshua, would you go along with that? You'll be there for us on Tuesday night. I think Ibrox, we've seen how special the atmosphere it can create on European nights, and the fans are going to have to play their part again, don't they? But there's only so much they can do. It's the players on the park that are going to have to step up and deliver.
Yeah, it's difficult, and obviously we spoke about this last week, and the fact that Van Bronckhorst has done really well when he's playing against teams that are better resources than Rangers, because of the way that he can adapt to them. Didn't really work. Obviously going away to Belgium whatsoever, completely kind of almost mirroring Union, and then getting behind and having to break a team down in a way that Rangers just aren't used to playing, with high wing backs, and just completely contrasting to maybe what they're used to domestically. But then what you would say, although they've done well at home, if you look at all the different games, I know Braga only had a 1-goal lead, and I think they were kind of blown away. So it is possible. But Leipzig and Dortmund and who's the other one? Red Star. It was all different games where I think the opposition had to come out more, whereas Union don't really have to come out. So I think it'll be a really big test. And if Rangers are able to, if Union really sit in, they are a good defensive team. As Johnny says about the defence, or one of you said about the defensive record in Belgium. If Rangers are able to break them down, I think that'll be a real step forward for them under Van Bronckhorst, because I don't think they've done as well in these kind of levelled ties, in particular away from home in Europe. So a big ask. I think it very much depends on the tempo that Rangers set, because if it gets to 0-0 at half time, or if it starts to look like it might just not happen, you're a little bit worried. But equally, how many times we sat here before a European game at Ibrox under Van Bronckhorst and thought meh, and it's turned out to just be kind of another famous night. So I definitely wouldn't write it off. I think it's going to require a really big performance from Rangers, and I'm sure they'll want to right the wrongs, Derek, of last week, because these players like Tavernier, Goldson, who have been here a long time, but also the new ones, they want to play Champions League football, and they'll believe they're much better than they showed themselves to be last week in Belgium.
Yeah, and I'm going to, along with what Sonny Boy says, he's going for a Colak hat-trick tomorrow. We'll certainly bite your hand off for that. Okay, folks, that'll do us there. Thanks to everyone for interacting with the show as ever. It's greatly appreciated. Just a reminder of the offer we have on the site, just £2 for 2 months worth of content. So many of you signing up just now, so thank you for that. Just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. We'll be back again tomorrow, but until then,